Good morning, and welcome to this session of the 2024 Northwest Interlibrary Loan and Resource Sharing Conference. Today's date is September the 19th, 2024. This session is titled Beyond Borders, Beyond Basics, the Value of International Resource Sharing. And joining us today, we have Lapis Cohen from the University of Pennsylvania, Chuan Lily Pang from University of Florida, and Rena Red from Clemson University. My name is Katie DeVette, and I am the convener for this session. Please let us know if you can't hear or can't see the shared screen. This session, as with all of our sessions, is being recorded with permission from the presenters. We plan to make these recordings available once captions have been added. Expect an email from Whova when the recordings have been posted, about 3 weeks after the conference. We will take questions from both the in-person room and from virtual attendees on Whova. Our virtual colleagues should post questions in the Whova Q&A tab. And don't forget to upvote your favorites. After the session, please complete the survey to enter our prize contest. And now, I believe, Lapis, you have the floor.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Katie, and good morning, Eugene, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. Lily, Rena, and myself are very excited that you are coming in to take a gander with us at Beyond Borders, Beyond Basics, the value of international resource sharing. I'm Lapis Cohen. I do the interlibrary loan at University of Pennsylvania. I'm also Union Library Support Staff, AFSCME Local 590, and he and they certainly work on the pronoun front. So with that, let's get started. And Rena, next slide, please. And as this is an international themed presentation, I can do no better and no worse than to quote the great Danish punk band, the Electric Deads, and say, this is the order of the day. And this is what we'll be going through during our presentation. We'll take a quick look at exactly what the International ILL Toolkit is and take a brief nano look at the history of the toolkit. Then we'll dive into some of the tools that are part of the toolkit, discovery in terms of finding out where things are held, because if you don't know what library something is held in, it's very hard to request that and get that for your patron. Also, once you've discovered where something is owned, we'll look at the various tools and resources involved in placing requests, whether a library accepts requests via email or via a web form, what type of payment methods they accept, and if there are any specific tips or tricks for that institution. We'll then take a look at the favorite or perhaps unfavorite topic of shipping and customs internationally. We'll look into some of the tips and tricks that the toolkit offers, and then we will gaze, as through a computer screen darkly, at some of the future plans that the toolkit has in store. Next slide, please. And for those of you who would like to take a look at the toolkit itself, as we are going through our presentation, here is a QR code. And so in order to have it up on the screen for a few seconds, I took a quick look today and found out that this is actually the 30th anniversary of QR codes. They were developed back in 1994 by the Japanese corporation DensoWave, which was a subsidiary of the Toyota Motor Corporation, to track auto parts during the assembly process. So assuming that my quick web search was correct, caveat emptor always, something new was learned today. So with that, let's move ahead to the next slide, please. So what is the International ILL Toolkit, as they asked in silent movies back in the 1920s, and how can it help you? So the International ILL Toolkit is a freely accessible online set of spreadsheets. It was conceived in an OCLC RLG Shares town hall back in 2021. Dennis Massey, who oversees RLG Shares, started convening town halls in March of 2020 when COVID hit, as we were all pretty much locked into our homes and apartments, and we were separated from our libraries, from our patrons, and from each other. And these online town halls were a way to reconnect, to try and preserve our sanity, but also to problem solve, to figure out how can we tell who can supply something electronically or in print, or when it would be safe to return physical items. And a lot of questions were asked and answered at those town halls. And in one of them in 2021, Brian Miller from The Ohio State University asked if anybody had, in terms of dealing with international requests, a cheat sheet. Maybe they had requested something, and so they had information about contact information or requesting methods or payment methods or other tips and tricks. And if there was a way to conglomerate those cheat sheets and make them broadly available to the resource sharing community. And a small little light bulb went off it. And indeed, we did have at University of Pennsylvania just such a cheat sheet. It had originally been a Word document that I had worked on with my colleague, Loretta Brown. And we had then transferred it to our online wiki, which we had in Confluence. And there was also some information in specific lender records that we had in ILLIAD, which is the ILL software we use. And I thought, well, we could pull a lot of that information out of our wiki and take a look at all the requests that we have that we made to those international libraries and get a starter set of international lenders with information there. So Dennis Massey kindly offered to sort of host that as a Google Sheet. And he, Brian, and myself came up with a beta version. And what that includes is a global lender listing in terms of information about discovery and catalogs, also contact information, requesting information, and payment information. There is a page of tips or tricks in terms of international ILL code or how to get IFLA vouchers or information about tips and tricks. And there are also international ILL request forms, and it looks like we have lost the slideshow at the moment. So while that is coming back up, I will still continue to go on and say that one of the other tools in the toolkit is request forms that are translated into different languages, line by line. And we have worked with language experts, people that know those languages fluently, but they're also library experts. So if we're requesting a loan from somebody, we're not requesting a bank loan. We're requesting a loan of a book or other returnable material. And those can be used as templates. And finally, we worked with the ALA, RUSA STARS, which is the Reference and User Services Association, Sharing and Transforming Access to Resources section, to present them with the beta version. And we also worked with the IFLA DDRS, which is International Federation of Library Associations, document delivery and resource sharing section, because librarians love acronyms, and got a lot of great feedback from all of those groups, and made the toolkit even better. For example, adding ISIL, the international symbol for libraries. So folks may be familiar certainly with the OCLC symbol for libraries, but in terms of internationally, ISIL symbols are ones that are, aha, woohoo, slides are back. Perfect timing. You know, the symbols that are used more broadly. And then at a certain point, the care and tending of the toolkit itself was taken over by the ALA RUSA STARS International ILL Committee, and it is still growing. And in a refrain that you will hear very often, you can help. I'll just close by saying at those town hall meetings, Dennis Massey at the beginning will often say, how can we help each other? And that's really what the toolkit is. How can we help each other, you know, disseminate this information? And so with that, I'll say, please move on to the next slide, and I will hand things, oh, actually, please move on to the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. My Zoom got cut and we are on Discovery. Can everybody see that, or is it still on how everybody can help you? How can it help
It's
you?
still on how can it help you in terms of what I'm saying.
Okay, let me, okay. There we go.
Okay.
Discovery now.
Actually, go back very quickly. One, please.
There
this
we
is
go.
just a quick slide, which.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
that this is just for those folks that are not looking at the toolkit now, a few snapshots in terms of the lender page, and any new entries are highlighted in green. Also a look at our tips and tricks page, and then finally a look at part of one of the request forms. And these are translated into the different languages line by line, and the English version of the request form stays static so that folks can compare and contrast and add any information as needed if they pull it into, say, an Iliad canned email or an email template in their email program to send a request out. And so with that, I will say, please move on to the next slide, and I will hand things over to Lily for the discovery section.
Thanks, Letters, for the introduction. Very helpful. And I'm Xuan Pang from University of Florida. And now let's dive into the toolkit and discover what tools are available there. So first, number of lenders. To date, the toolkit has 247 international lenders and 58 US lenders. So total about more than 300 lenders across the world. A huge thanks and big shout out to the global IL colleagues who volunteered to join the list. We need more. Just like Lattice said, we need help. We help each other, and everyone is welcome. So the next, what lender information is available? The lender information include OCLC sample and ISIL. For some of you not familiar with ISIL, is the international standard and identifier for libraries and related organizations. The reason we include this information in the toolkit is this number is more important, familiar, and useful to many library staff outside the United States. And links to our website and our email to help our staff to locate the lender's primary contact information and their policy. Unlike catalogs, help your staff quickly check libraries, holdings information, and the availability at the item level. Next slide, please. Union catalog and union databases. National and union catalog specified to country or region are other useful information listed on the toolkit. So far, the toolkit has 11 union catalogs. Here are some examples in Europe, Germany, and Poland. So please feel free to explore these resources. They are very helpful and useful. And national libraries and databases. Again, here are some examples. Japan, SANI. If you ever need materials related to Japanese studies, SANI is a place to go. And Spain, Dialnet. Search for Spanish language journal articles from Spain and Latin American. The last one, I think we're all familiar with this database, thousands of dissertations from United Kingdom. The on-demand digitization request is also very helpful from British Library ETHOS, but unfortunately they are not available now. Hopefully the database will be up and running again soon. Next slide, please. More resources and services. Translation, like Lattice mentioned earlier, we have about IL request template in 12 foreign languages. Another one useful links we put there is ACRLIS multilingual glossary language table, which is just released in March this year. provided expertise translation for library-related terms in 8 languages, which is very helpful. Free reference services. The first one is you may be all familiar with also University of Illinois Slavic reference service to fund holding libraries and the contact information for Russian and Slavic language materials. They accept email and online request form. You can create an email template in ALID and send the citation verification request within the ALID. Another one is National Data Library International Reference Services. In Japan, they provide citation verification services in Japanese. And the last one is the University of Pittsburgh's free East Asian Gateway services to get Chinese journal articles. This is just a brief introduction about some information are available in the toolkit, and please feel free to explore. We believe you will discover more by yourself. Now I'm going to hand over the presentation to Renee.
Hi all, I'm Rena Red at Clemson University, and I'm going to discuss requesting and information about shipping and customs. So when you're in the toolkit, there's a lot of information, but if you look at specifically at columns I through N, you're going to see some other information in terms of what their website is, maybe what their pricing is, what they will charge for loans versus copies, what material they will lend out, who their contact information is, and also some might even have an online order form. And so one thing to keep in mind is that this information is in the toolkit, but if a library has updated specific pages, they might not remember to go back to the toolkit to update their pages, or maybe the person who originally put the information in the toolkit has left. So sometimes you still might get a bad link, but at least you have a little bit more to go on in terms of domains and things of that nature. So going on, and then when you're on these pages at these different libraries, you will find a lot of different information, like I mentioned. This is one in the Czech Republic, and they are very clear about what they will lend, what they charge, who pays what, and the conditions for their loans. Then you will find others. This is in France, and this is pretty much saying, you know, if you want to request something, we want to know the author, the title, the edition, the ISBN, and you should email us. So it varies, your mileage may vary per institution. And then I was so pleased to realize that it was 2024, and KU Leuven in the Netherlands, in Belgium, has an actual ILL request form for other libraries. So you don't even have to like email a random email address and into the void. You get to put it in a form. But just remember, as you can see, this is what you're seeing are screenshots that Google automatically translated. So if you look, you'll see where it's asking for borrowing loan type. It says the book or the article. So it's Google's fault. That's not the institution's fault that it says the book or author, and author. That's just the way Google and their silliness translates that. So don't hold it against the library if you run into weird stuff. So when all else fails, always, somebody said they lost sound in the chat. Can anybody still hear me? Okay, other people can hear. Okay, thanks. Anyway, when all else fails, there should be an email address, connected to the entry for that institution. And what you can do is email the potential lender. And as Lapis and Lily mentioned, we do have templates in Arabic, Chinese, Dutch, English, French, German, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Russian, and Spanish. Hooray! So use those, make use of those. And the way the toolkit is set up, unfortunately, I didn't grab a screenshot of this, but you can see the English translation and then move your slider over and you can see how each translation matches up to that English translation so that you're not putting funky information in the wrong field. So that will also guide you. So those are fantastic. Whoever did that, kudos to you. But let's say that you find something and there isn't a Greek language template. So what you're going to do is you could do a couple of things. You could attempt to translate the template using like Google Translate or something like that and use it again. But if you don't want to do that, just remember, you can do a couple of things. You can put basic information, bibliographic information into the request. You can put your request, attempt to send it both in, let's say, Greek and have an English version at the bottom so that if the Greek translation that Google did you wrong and is completely not understandable to somebody who is actually Greek, there will at least be a native translation down at the bottom for them to look at. And, if there is a catalog record for something, thank goodness for universal symbols online. So there is, I highlighted in red, hopefully you can see it, but, the permalink symbol, make use of that. Any bibliographic information that you can find, add it in because that will only help and make their hunt for the item, less arduous. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. So what else might be involved in requesting? We personally, and I know others have, we will sometimes receive an extra form from the library for a patron to fill out to say, yes, this is definitely for personal use. Like they need that extra just that extra documentation that this is for personal use, this is for personal research, this is not for any kind of public distribution. Sometimes if it's a really basic form, I will fill it out and send it back as like a proxy. If it's more if it needs more information, such as the title of what the patron is working on or something like that, I will send it to the faculty member and get them to fill it out and send it back. So it all kind of depends to me on, how in depth it is. Also, they vary in terms of forms of payment. Some take IFLA vouchers, some take credit cards, some take wire transfers, which is something that, we don't really use here in the United States. And unfortunately, my institution will not let me set anything like that up. So if they won't take a credit card or IFLA voucher, we're kind of out of luck. But if you ever have had good luck with wire transfers, I would really like to hear about that. So one of the wonderful things that Lapis mentioned as like a tip and a trick that he allowed us to put in this section is if you pay with IFLA vouchers, see if you can send a photograph of the vouchers you're going to send through snail mail to the lender so that they will know that, this request is in good faith. You do have IFLA vouchers to back it up and that they are in the mail so that they can go ahead and get started on the request and that will expedite it. So this picture is from the original IFLA package that my predecessor's predecessor got, I think maybe in the late 90s. I don't know, but it has like all these pamphlets and everything in it. So I just keep it all as it was when I started my job. So anyway, that is a good pro tip. So thank you so much to Lapis. And also, if you need IFLA vouchers, these slides will be available and there is a link to how you can order IFLA vouchers via OCLC. And so that's it's pretty easy to do. So let's go to the really exciting world of shipping and customs. So we all have to work with different carriers, probably based on which companies your institutions, or if you work for a state institution that your state has a contract for. They have negotiated things and probably have negotiated pricing across multiple carriers. So that is something to check with. Or you could be one of those people who might have an issued P card, a purchase card, and you can just take your P card and take your package and go to the post office and mail it yourself. But definitely worth it to check and see if before you mail, if your lender requires anything special like tracking or insurance. Your mileage may vary based on which country you're sending it to. Right now, there are some issues getting things into Spain. They have very specific instructions regarding what you're supposed to do. And you should state on the customs form, documents supplied between research libraries, no commercial value, and indicate that the value is a very low amount or zero. So that's also worth it to check. And some of these things are recorded in the toolkit. So in terms of filling out the customs form, you want to select document or other library loan. And then, I just saw somebody said UPS will not allow zero value, so you have to put 1. Some places have reported that a zero value is a flag. So definitely, just consider what works, because you don't want to put something valued at like $1 million, but so you can't put it at 0. So just, use your noggins and choose a good number. So going on, so Amy Chu, who is at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, found this harmonized tariff number, which has based on her experience, this has worked for her, and she has not had any issues with it. So she has given us permission to share it, and hope that everybody has the same look that she does. If you use harmonized code 9801, and I'm not going to read the rest of that, that will help get you through. And there is a place on the form under number 24, HS tariff number, and that will help you. So additional suggestions. No matter what you put on your customs form, an additional sticker to go on the box is always a good idea, that says like interlibrary loan item, loan between libraries, library loan, library materials. Something that uses the word library is always a good thing. And then if you still have questions, reach out, contact the lender. Clearly, you've already been in contact with them if you're getting ready to mail them something. So, reach out, say hello, and ask your question. Or, contact colleagues here. Wonderful area of our profession that is robust with listservs, and always people who are caring enough to answer. So hit a listserv, don't agonize alone, ask. And then one thing we like to do where I work is we like to say thank you. And we try to send something small, that won't add a lot of weight, or, set off some kind of alarm or get the dogs on it, just to say thank you. And so we got a nice response once from a library in Spain that said that they enjoyed our little bag, that it was a nice touch. So, just anything just to, create more collegiality and a sense of brotherhood and sharing among all of us resource sharing practitioners. So with that, I will turn it back over for tips and tricks.
All right. Thank you, Rena. And we can move on to the next slide, please.
There we go.
And we'll start off with a couple tips that are really about the toolkit itself. The first is that it's possible to set up read-only filtering. At a previous webinar, we had attendees said, wouldn't it be great if we could just filter individually what we needed to out of the toolkit, but not that would change the view of the toolkit for everybody else? And Brian, Dennis, myself said, wow, that seems like a great idea. We'll look into it. We looked into it and saw that Google Sheets actually has that functionality. You can highlight a specific row. I would suggest the second row with the category headers. Click on the data dropdown at the top of the toolkit and choose create filter views. You'll get a little warning that says this filter view is temporary, so only you can see it. And then you can filter by any category within the toolkit. So say you want to filter by a specific country or region, or a method of payment, or a library that accepts loan requests, or when something was last updated to only view things that were added or updated in the last few months. You can do all of that. And only you will see that filter. So that can be very useful. And to give people a little bit of a look ahead, we're going to be adding a tips category column to the tips and tricks page. So that will be even more powerful moving forward. Next slide, please. Something else that you can do if you want to have additional notes or create just really specific local information using the toolkit is to download a copy onto a computer at your institution. You can just click on the file drop down, choose download, and then choose the file format that you want to use. We would suggest that it works best as a spreadsheet, so an XLSX or a CSV file, but you can certainly download as a Word doc or a PDF if that works best for you. And this could be helpful if you wanted to add local notes. Let's say you had met a librarian from University of Vilnius in Lithuania at a conference, and you had cause to work with them. There might be some information that you would want to add specifically for yourself in terms of future requests, or specific experiences you had in terms of things that worked best for you. Although if it would be applicable to the broader resource sharing community, I would again absolutely invite you to send that in as a suggestion to share with everyone. But for things that are absolutely local, you can always just download the local copy. And each of the toolkit pages has an indication in terms of when it was last updated in the upper left-hand corner, so you know when things have been added or changed. Next slide, please. So in terms of what is on that tips or and tricks page by country and region, and I do have to thank a number of people when we first started the toolkit that were really active in terms of sending suggestions in. For example, Jenny Vitti at Emory, Richard Foster, who was at New York Public Library and has since retired, Sylvia Cho from CUNY Grad, were all really helpful. And I do want to say that I'm going to try and credit as many people specifically as possible, because the toolkit is made by many hands, but at the same time, I will undoubtedly forget some folks. So I apologize for that in advance. And then also for anything where I'm using a language other than English or including English, and I mispronounce something, no disrespect is intended or implied. So on the tips and tricks page, we have general tips such as the International ILL code, or things in terms of how to deal with the toolkit. There's also payment information in terms of how to get IFLA vouchers, for example, either directly from IFLA or via OCLC. As Renee just was going over, certain mailing and customs tips. There's also, as Lily went over, union catalogs and databases and extended resources such as the Slavic Reference Service from University of Illinois, or the East Asian Gateway Service from University of Pittsburgh. And again, you can make it better, so please send us your tips. Next slide, please. So in a very specific instance, also on the customs front, many folks might be familiar because requests between Canada and the United States of America are probably the most common cross-border requests in this part of the world. With the customs information that we previously had up on the toolkit, which referenced tariff 9993, GST code 51, with additional information about international loans between libraries, International Act of 78, no commercial value, and any value stated is for insurance purposes only. a few weeks before the ALA conference, so in the middle of June, we received a suggestion from Jessica Cowden at Bucknell, who said there's another tariff and GST code that might be more helpful, especially in terms of materials being returned to Canadian libraries, the 9813 or 9814 with GST code 66, and also an indication of whose property the material was that was being returned. And maybe we would want to add that to the toolkit. And we started looking into the situation, and some of the online documentation from Canadian Customs was a little bit ambiguous in our eyes, and we wanted to be as careful as possible. And then to make things even more interesting, we also started to receive reports that libraries had seen information about specific customs brokers in requests that they were receiving from Canadian libraries, or in terms of conditionals if they had requested something from a Canadian library and that Canadian library wanted that information included. So we decided that in order to get as authoritative information as we could, we would reach out to the Fédération Canadienne des Associations des Bibliothèques, with thanks to Tom Bruna, who is on the IFLA DDRS resource sharing section. Previously at the University of Pennsylvania, he was traded in the off season to Princeton, although I still fancy our chances in the playoffs. But he put us in touch with Donald Taylor at Simon Fraser University, who is also on the IFLA DDRS committee, who gave us some really helpful information. So next slide, please. So what everyone loves to see on a conference presentation, a great wall of text on a PowerPoint slide. For shame, Lapis, for shame. But what we wanted to do here was really kind of show our work and be very clear about the information, why we were presenting the new entries. And the information that we got from Donald was that really the Canadian Border Service Agency were really interested in what the value that was being stated. And so any kind of tariff information or GST code information was very much secondary. That if you put this is worth $100 in terms of insurance value, that is the value that they were going to take as the important bit of information, and they were going to get their cut on that $100. So that the real bottom line was that whatever you sent, and in terms of the tariff code or the GST code, it was the stated amount that was the most important, and anything over $20 Canadian would kind of trigger that charge by the revenue service. So our best practice is really to say, whatever else you do, put that value at less than $20 Canadian in whatever your local currency is. So $10 or $15 American, or again, whatever your local currency is. And then certainly if a Canadian library includes specific customs broker information, then please include that when you're mailing something to the Canadian library, as that will be very helpful in getting the materials back to them, because they have worked with that customs broker in order to smooth things through the customs triage, as it were. And because this is so wordy, we've had certain comments about it. I would anticipate that at a certain point, this will be trimmed down to a more manageable, it's the dollar amount, folks. Please put that value at $20 or less. So move to the next slide, please. And this is what we changed the entries to between the ALA conference and this conference, which is to take out that information about this, any value stated is for insurance purposes only, to really accentuate what the declared value should be, but then also to have a second entry saying that if you're only returning books that are owned by Canadian libraries, you can use this second tariff code and GST code, and that will be more accurate. Although if you're returning a mix, then the 99.93 GST 51 is perfectly workable. It's the dollar amount that is crucial, and it's all a bit Looney Tunes, but that's the way things are with customs. Next slide, please. So, Vedesi Bahasa Udarnaha, Gahardan Nagarnahus, or put another way, foreign language citation, do not panic. Do not panic. Do not panic. Next slide, please. So this is actually something that is not technically in the toolkit, because the toolkit is a set of spreadsheets, and this doesn't work that well there. So we're presenting it at this conference, and we will link back to these slides and also to this video when it becomes publicly available in 2025. It's a little bit meta, but this is something that can help with foreign language requests, whether you have to go overseas or not. And we're going to be looking at the 3 T's: truncation, transliteration, and translation. Next slide, please. So let's say that a patron submits a citation for something from Bal Mus Civ Saint Nat Verona, and you have various options in terms of trying to figure out what that is. You could do a web search. You could look up in a print or online resource that has abbreviations for journal titles, or you could go back to your patron and say, we can't figure this out. Get us a better citation, that it's on you. I'm not the boss of you. That might be considered not necessarily the best practice in customer service. And in this case, I can do no better and no worse than really to quote Amelia Fletcher, economist, PhD. It says that C might be the heavenly option, and you could try to use truncation and wildcards. And to search, in this case, Bal asterisk, Mus asterisk, Civ asterisk, Saint Nat Verona in a catalog. And this works in first search. This works in many catalogs. And you can always also take a look in terms of what wildcards are usable in a specific catalog, usually from the advanced searching page. And if you search using that truncation in OCLC first search, you'll get Bollettino del Museo de Civico de Storia Naturale de Bella Verona, which would be typically the title that you're looking for. And then you could verify via volume and year matching up with the patron citation. There are also specific wildcards if you only have an individual letter that you're not certain about. So exclamation point will often work for multiple letters, which would bring back results for both woman and women. And then question mark will often work in terms of multiple letters. So let's say you had a patron citation and you only got one hit, and you weren't certain, maybe this was like a British publication or an American publication. You wanted to check those different spellings. This would bring back both the American and British versions of color in this example. Next slide, please. But what if you had a patron citation that, with their best of their intentions, was not really helpful? They sent in Mr. Hood, they said this is from 1983, but you weren't getting any hits in any of the searches that you did. You ran it through Google Translate and you got something in a language that you may or may not be able to read. And it asked, is that what you meant? And you thought, maybe, not certain. One thing that you could do is try searching one of the keywords in a foreign language with the year or publisher or something else, and trying to narrow down the results. And again, this is something that when you get a strong possibility, you can go back to the patron and say, this is the work we did. Is this the title you meant? And they can either confirm or deny. And if they say that's not the title, they might give you additional helpful information, but they'll typically be grateful and appreciative in terms of the extra steps that you've taken on their behalf. Next slide, please. But what would you do with a citation of either of these examples, assuming that you didn't read either of these languages? And the spoiler here is, please do not panic. Next slide, please. So with the first example in Arabic, and you received no hits in terms of any searching with the title, in first search or in other catalogs that you tried, you could try Google Translate in order to get information on the title, or in this case, the author. And in this case, the search that was really helpful was the translated author and then a keyword from the title. And again, if a year matches up with the patron's original site, you can go back to them and say, is this what you meant? The important thing really is just the flexibility in terms of your search strategies. If the first strategy doesn't work, try a different strategy with different words, publisher, year, and things like that. Next slide, please. For the Chinese title, again, there's different databases one could use. For example, Sinai, that you can search in the original language. It provides information on transliteration that can be helpful if you're doing a scan title search. The citation that the patron had provided had divided the words up into different ways, which wasn't helpful initially. This provides a better, more official transliteration, but more importantly here, it provides an ISBN that really helps with getting down to the correct record. Next slide, please. And also, reading is fundamental, but in these sort of cases, it's not always strictly speaking necessary. Sometimes it's just down to pattern recognition. So with this title, you could take a look at it and look at the number of characters. And for example, it's just by personal association. That symbol on the left-hand side in red really reminds me of the symbol from the TV show of the 1980s, The Greatest American Hero, with William Catt, Robert Culp, Connie Selica. Kids, ask your grandparents. And that symbol on the right in the sort of magenta, because I'm from Philadelphia, really reminds me of a hashtag with a little bit of attitude. And I can compare and contrast in terms of those symbols with the records that come up in a catalog to verify that this looks to be the title that I'm indeed searching for. Next slide, please. One other, and this is for something that folks that are au courant, maybe very old news to them. It was kind of news to me, with thanks to Sylvie Larson at University of Pennsylvania and Brian Miller, again, at the Ohio State University, Google Translate or Google Lens or other translation programs that you might have on your iPad or smartphone. If you hover over something in a foreign language, it will translate it into your language of choice, in this case, English. And this could certainly be something that is very helpful, especially on the lending side. If someone makes a request to you and says, I want something that's on this subject, and you can take a look in the index or table of contents or at a article or chapter title to verify that it's something that you're indeed looking for. And please move to the next slide. And lastly, just by the way, a few last free tips and tricks. Past is prologue. Sometimes looking at your older requests can be helpful. We had an instance where a patron requested a French dissertation. We thought that might be very complex and hard to find, but it seemed familiar. So we looked at old requests. We had requested it before. We had received it. We had actually purchased a copy to add to our collection after the loan. It was caught in processing purgatory. We were able to speed that processing along and get it back to the patron without having to request it from overseas again. Also, if you run into a record and there's very few holdings and they're all overseas, try different search strategies, because there may be a better record out there that something is held domestically. Build relationships. That is a very good way to get a very good service and just a way to just build community. And then finally, ask. Even if you think the odds of you getting something are very low, ask, because you never know. And even if you can't get something, you can at least tell your patron, this is what we tried, and they will, certainly appreciate that. But often you may be successful. And so with that, next slide, please. I will hand things back over to Lily to look at our future plans.
Thanks, Lepus, for the fabulous tips and the tricks. And also thanks, Rina, for sharing your many years experience with us. So we hope you all learn something about the toolkit. As a practitioner, you see the value of the work. However, as we all know, nothing can be perfect. So what is next, and how do we move forward? Future plans. We will continue to improve and grow the toolkit through promoting, developing, and collaborating. Next slide, please. Promoting, marketing, increasing awareness. 3 years after launch, we felt that we still need to increase the awareness of this exiting of the toolkit. Outreach to resource sharing community. We will continue to reach out to the global resource sharing community through a variety professional channel and multiple platforms. Presenting at conference. That's why we are here today. Next slide, please. Developing. the more the merrier. We definitely want to sustain and grow the toolkit. We need more participants, as well as foreign language experts to help us create more language template. And more resources, for example, adding new resources focus on international copyright law, licensing agreement, and custom regulation into the international IL toolkit to help transform the toolkit to a critical resource that empowers IL practitioners with information needed to help the resource sharing professional to tackle the challenge issue associated with the international intellectual law service. We are also brainstorming some possible improvement, for example, better user interface, experience, and experience. Are there any better format options than Google Sheet? Should we explore AI feature plug-in to improve accessibility? If you have any ideas, please let us know. Next slide, please. Collaborating. We can do it all by ourselves. We need to establish partnership to collaborate and strengthen each other. For example, RSCVD and Talaria. I think everybody familiar with RSCVD is a community of volunteer libraries providing high quality, open, and collaborative resource sharing services to help librarians to ensure universal and equitable access to information. And please feel free to explore more information on their website. So we think we also need collaboratively maintain and constantly update the toolkits with new information. So we have a lot to do in the future. We would like to invite you, library, to join the toolkits if you haven't. Together, we will better serve our user. And here is the information to join the toolkit. Yeah, that is about our presentation, and thank you so much for your attention.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we have just a few minutes for questions. I know we've got several in the chat. If I could have a volunteer to run a mic around the room, that would be amazing. In the meantime, the most voted question is, how do you handle the differences in copyright law between countries?
So I think everyone will have like different ideas on this. I'll just speak for myself and say that it's really hard to know the copyright laws in each country. I would just make the assumption that every country is going to work under their own copyright law, but also under their individual understanding. If you ask a dozen US libraries what their understanding of copyright law or what they do, it's going to differ, and that's going to be the same thing internationally. And then also when people come in and out of an office, policies may change. So from the borrowing side, I would just say always just request things. You might learn, for example, a lot of German libraries are not able to supply from popular periodicals due to a recent change, but other ones may. But just ask, because you never know. And then on the lending side, just go with what your local policy is in terms of whether it's Cantu, alternatives to Cantu, or anything else.
Fantastic. If you have a question in the space, go ahead and raise your hand. While we're moving the mic, aside from the cost of shipping, are there downsides to lending internationally?
I'll jump in and say really quickly, I don't think so. I mean, you know, as we all talk about, you know, resource sharing is, you know, kind of a karma thing. So yeah, I want to lend so that we can borrow. And yeah, maybe there is more of you know, there might be a bigger chance of like something being lost or lost in shipping. We attempted to ship something to Canada last year and it ended up in Bogota, Colombia. So, I mean, yeah, things might happen, but I mean, I think to me, I'm not going to send anything out the door that is priceless. And building that international goodwill, especially as an American, like that's really important.
Very good. Very good. We've got a question in the space now.
Mhm.
Hi, this is actually pretty related to the last question. I've been able to lend a couple things internationally so far, but the cost of shipping is pretty crazy. It's usually about $100 to ship one book. Do you have any advice or I guess recommendations for how to maybe take that down?
Our cost is about half that. So I don't know what kind of institution you're at. I mean, I think our cost is probably based on what our state has negotiated with carriers, and that might have something to do with it. So that might be something that you could look at if you are free to explore alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using a courier like FedEx or UPS, and you have the possibility of shipping internationally via USPS, you might want to, investigate that because that might be cheaper. But a lot of it is just down to what has been negotiated, as Rena said, by your institution or state, depending on what kind of place you're at.
Very good. While we look for an in-room question, we have folks who are interested in doing more international borrowing and lending. Are there specific groups or projects they should join to do that?
I mean, I think, one thing is, join the International ILL Toolkit if you haven't already. There's another that Lily mentioned, the RSCVD group, which was founded by Peter Bay during the pandemic in order to keep resource sharing going internationally. And I'll put that into chat, a link to that. And that's something that's been taken over by IFLA, and it's a continuing requesting platform that also is involved nationally, and that's another good place. And then I also just bringing up International ILL in various online resource sharing forums, whether it's Shares Town Halls or IDS forums, or here at NWIL. I mean, certainly Lily, Rena, and myself will be around. We're going to look for the other questions and look in chat, and we'll be around in the community space, and people can get in touch with us as well, but also just in whatever local resource sharing groups that you're involved with, to reach out to other people and see what their experiences are, to share information and knowledge and experience.
Excellent. And with that, we have reached the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Lapis, Lily, and Rena. Those of you who are here in the space, you've got a few minutes, and have a wonderful day. We'll keep an eye out for those questions online so our speakers can answer them.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.